You're watching a brand new week of Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, in difficult economic times, should Indians tighten their belts and go for austerity? Oil Minister Veerappa Moily joins us on the show after he faces flack for apparently suggesting that petrol pumps could be shut down from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. to save fuel. He also suggests carpooling and reduced travel. Is that doable? Is it practical? Or is it completely bizarre? First, faced with intense all-round criticism today and a rap from the Prime Minister's office, the Oil Minister did a U-turn and denied ever suggesting a proposal to shut down petrol pumps after 8 p.m. in order to save fuel. But he has stuck to other austerity measures that he has talked about, like carpooling and reducing unnecessary travel, as he puts it. With the oil import bill rising, the Minister says it's time for some serious measures.
मुझे इस सुझाव में कोई शक्ति नहीं लगती, तर्क नहीं लगता। ये व्यर्थ में नागरिकों को और तंग करने का एक साधन जरूर हो सकता है।
It shows the government, the Congress-led UPA-2 government is in chaos and confusion.
The silver lining on all this is that maybe the government as a whole is now beginning to understand the seriousness of the economic problem that we are facing right now.
I think this government sitting there in Delhi is really far away from the ground realities.
The Petroleum Minister was forced to do a quick U-turn on an idea that was floated only yesterday. Keep petrol stations open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. only to ration fuel.
We have not worked out the details how the austerity measures or the conservation mission will have to be launched. Country needs that petroleum consumption will have to be conserved, and we need to adopt some austerity.
Under pressure to cut down the fuel bill that stood at a whopping $144.2 billion last year, the Petroleum Ministry is launching a Save Fuel campaign this month. In turn, the ministry estimates it'll save $20 billion and help reduce India's fuel import bill. The Petroleum Ministry's proposed measures include importing cheaper crude oil from Iran. Every time the value of the rupee falls by a rupee against the dollar, the import bill goes up by 7,900 crores. Oil companies are losing over 10 rupees for every litre of diesel and about 33 rupees per litre of kerosene. The Petroleum Ministry estimates at current levels the losses of the oil companies will mount to 1,80,000 crores by this fiscal. His government, though, chose the easier way out and spared politically sensitive diesel and kerosene.
If we are concerned about the poor people, then we should see which action hurts them less. And I believe, and I'm convinced that raising prices of petroleum products will hurt the poor people less than if you were to just not do anything.
None can perhaps grudge any government plan that talks of saving fuel, saving dollars and improving foreign exchange outflows. But to talk of fuel rationing is certainly a throwback to the Licence Raj era, something that the Indian economy can do without. With camera person Manoj Kumar, in Parliament, Sandeep Phukan, NDTV.
And I spoke just a little while earlier to Oil Minister Veerappa Moily. Well, joining us now is the man in the eye of the storm today. Oil Minister Veerappa Moily speaks to us. Mr. Moily, your ministry has put out a statement today saying that there is no proposal that is being considered to keep petrol pumps open only between certain hours. However, you did say in various interviews since yesterday that shutting down pumps after 8 o'clock in the evening was one idea that was floated, although nothing had been decided yet. Why are you backtracking now?
I am very sorry that there is no backtracking at all. This is only, the media which has created this kind of a hype and panicky, which is totally unwarranted and unnecessary. I don't want to ascribe, which media, but ultimately, I don't think there is any need for panicking. I have already said, there was no proposal made by us. There is no proposal pending with us, and no decision taken, particularly to keep the petrol bunk closed after 8 p.m. up to the 8 a.m. I don't know it has all come up from where. And I am telling you that, we need not become panicky. We have enough stock of oil and we have enough inventory, and we will be in a position to provide the petroleum products, around the clock, all these 365 days and more. So we are very strong on that. There is no need of course, we have been working. I said that we are launching a mega event, particularly on 16th September 2013, particularly on conservation. I said, we'll come out with that package, not now, on 16th. Till that time, the people can think about it. People can provide ideas. We are keeping the, our eyes and ears open for any suggestion which comes out, which will churn out. But I must tell you that, we have not thought of this idea and it is not under consideration.
Well, I'm going to quote two interviews to you, sir. First, the one that NDTV did yesterday, where we asked you whether you had suggested that petrol pumps should shut down after 8 o'clock in the evening. And this is what you said. This is your exact quote. No, we have not worked out the details on how austerity measures will have to be launched. The point is, sir, you did not deny that any such proposal existed. You didn't say it's a rubbish proposal.
No. When you have question was put by your representative, whether you have any idea. I said we have not worked out that. When I have not worked out that, what do you mean that? Any sensible interpreter will definitely say that there is no idea behind it. I think your cat is out of the bag now. I think your channel has created this. You will have to kill this.
But you didn't rule it out, sir. That's the point. And you also told the PTI news agency, and I give you the quote that you had there, that there are various options and ideas that are being floated. Shutting down petrol pumps during the night is one of them, but we have not decided. It's just a proposal.
What do you mean by floated around? Is it the proposal of mine? Floated around the public. Floated around by the people.
It's quoted to you.
Do you think it as a proposal? Do you think it as a decision of the ministry? I think no sensible person will think about it.
Let me though ask you more importantly on what this fuel conservation drive is that you are planning to launch from the 16th of September that you've talked about. What exactly would it involve?
Yeah, to be very frank with you, every year we hold it. This time we will do it with more vigor. And I would like to brainstorm it with everybody concerned, all stakeholders, then come out with measures. That's all.
But what would those measures involve, sir? What exactly would those austerity measures involve?
I don't want to spell out. And again, people will misinterpret it. I would like to announce it on 16. I don't want any of these proposals should be out now till we finalize it or unless the ministry is seized of that.
You've also advocated austerity in other ways. You've said that people should use petrol sparingly, that people should maybe just carpool, use one car, reduce unnecessary travel.
No, that is an appeal. Yes, that is true. This is an appeal. It's a voluntary thing to be happened. We don't want to impose anything. We don't want to put any ceiling. And it is for the people because after all, this is a precious fuel. And we are spending dollars in terms of that. 80% of the petroleum products are imported. And we will be paying $160 billion every year. And that is why every rupee of purchase of the petroleum products linked up with the dollar. As a result, every rupee depreciates. I will be losing 8,000 crores. That means from 58 about a couple of months back, it has now to 68 rupees. That means to say, I have already lost 80,000 crores. This is the kind of a dimension of problem which the country has to be concerned. Everyone should be concerned. And I don't think when I express a concern, anybody should create a panic about it when I am not panic about it. I am quite confident on the ground to combat any contingencies, which whether it is any US action on this area or anything, I need not become panicky. I am very confident. The oil marketing companies are quite confident enough to meet with any challenges from wherever it comes to.
When you talk about these austerity measures and carpooling and all those things, is that going to extend to members of parliament as well, to politicians as well? Are we going to see them carpooling too?
No, when I give an appeal, it includes everybody, including myself.
Mr. Moily, the other big question, of course, is there going to be a sharp hike in diesel prices that's going to take place soon, especially given the state of the economy today?
Whatever could be done, we have already taken a decision that we will, raise it 45 to 50 paise. We have already done it from today and, yesterday. And we have also said, the petrol is already deregulated. The oil companies are at liberty to announce it as and when the prices escalate, and 2 or 3 times they decreased also.
But will there be a sharper hike? Will there be a bigger hike in diesel prices soon?
Not on today. Not for the present. I will speak up today. I am not a fortune teller to tell about tomorrow,
So in other words, you don't rule it out. You don't rule out a hike.
When I say I am not a fortune teller to tell about tomorrow, how can I speak about you, what you do and what I do? I think better in a man, a good economics like this, and it is also dynamic economics. And I don't think we should conjecture or talk to the on hypothesis basis. You cannot do that.
Mr.
I don't want to enter upon that.
Okay. You've also written to the Prime Minister saying that India should buy additional oil from Iran. Now, we've actually reduced oil imports from Iran because that country is facing sanctions from the West, from the United States. How is that going to work?
No, it is nothing. No, I am telling you, it is nothing abnormal. Iran we are importing already. Sometime it may be more, it may be little less. Within the wider frame of the US sanctions. And that is being done, and this time also it is done. It may be done little more. And ultimately, I would like to see that end of this financial year, that means as on 31st March 2014, I would like to see that $25 billion worth the import is reduced. As a result, the oil sector will be contributing 1% to the GDP of the country.
So how will any war on Syria and in that region affect oil prices here? Are you concerned deeply about that?
No, these are all the questions I am not prepared to. They are all hypothetical. I am not going to answer these questions. About what will happen, I always wish there should not be war.
Well, one final question, Mr. Moily. On one hand, you've said from the beginning that the fundamentals of the economy are strong, that people shouldn't panic. On the other hand, you've got yourself talking about austerity measures. You seem to be giving mixed signals.
Do you think that the country will be happy by importing 80%? By importing the petroleum product worth $160 billion? My idea is that I would like to make this country oil, energy independent by 2030. To that extent, we will be working towards that. And till that time, one has to tighten the belt, adopt all sorts of austere measures, ensure that we definitely don't lose out our wealth to the other countries by means of this. This will be just like money order. We are earning here and sending our money outside. This I don't want. This has to be reversed year to year, day by day, hour by hour. This is what I am working with regard to the indigenous production of oil products.
All right, Mr. Moily, thanks very much for joining us. Let's see what those austerity measures are that you so mysteriously kept to yourself. On the 16th of September, as you say, they will be launched. Well, that was the oil minister speaking to me earlier. So is India ready for austerity? Should India's middle class be tightening its belts? Joining us tonight, we have Lord Meghna Desai here in the studio with us. Columnist and author Tavleen Singh joins us tonight from Mumbai. Also, Jai Panda, Lok Sabha MP of the BJD. Nalin Kohli, member of the BJP's National Executive, joins us from here in Delhi and will be joined shortly by Abhishek Singhvi of the Congress Party. Lord Meghna Desai, were you convinced by what the oil minister said? Firstly, on this whole issue of petrol pumps, since that got everyone so riled up. Were you convinced that by his explanations on that? Because he said it and he's backtracked.
No, I think, what is going on right now is that the government doesn't realize what serious trouble the economy is in. This is not the time to fly kites. This is not time to do uncoordinated announcement by different ministers.
So this was kite flying.
Only the finance minister ought to make any announcement on the economy. And if you want to reduce import bill, there are better ways of doing it than starting this rumor about 8 to 8. Because 8 will lead to black market of oil, petrol, everything. I think if the government had the courage, they should say, temporarily, we are going to put a 50% tax on petrol. But it will go away very soon. Something like that, which would be drastic. But it will be temporary. You have to act on price, not to start rationing or quotas or keeping petrol pumps shut. All those will remind us of the good old days of socialism. And right now, the outside world is watching whether India will stick to an open market or we will go back to the old days. If we do, money will go out much faster than it already is doing. So it's a very dire situation in which somebody in the government ought to take control when they talk about austerity.
You talked about the socialist era. Tavleen Singh, somebody joked that all we need now is to bring bell bottoms back and then we're truly back in the 70s. Does it feel like the 70s to you again, Licensed Raj?
Yes, except that it's not at all funny, is it?
No, it's not.
And you know, the point that I want to make, Nidhi, right away is I'm sick and tired of a government that has reduced the economy to the position that it now is, and instead of cutting expenses on itself, it's now putting the burden on people, on, you know, ordinary people. To me, that is really scandalous, you know. I mean, what is the minister worried about? Already production of cars has come down by half. So, you know, austerity is coming on its own. And then, you know, you have the finance minister and the prime minister talking about inviting investment to a country that is so clearly going to pieces. So, you know, I mean, if he wants to talk like this, I really wish that, you know, the prime minister would put, you know, a little lock on his tongue at the moment, because he's really just exacerbating a very bad situation already.
Well, we have Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, and let me get his response to that. Dr. Singhvi, clearly a huge faux pas, and you have the oil minister eating his own words today.
There are two levels of this discussion, Nidhi, and let me try to address both. The larger version, yes, I think we are in difficult times. Yes, I think it's not a very happy moment in the economy. But then to think that it is complete, overall, unconditional gloom and pessimism, if out of 10 years or 9.5 years we've had over 8 years of good times, then the moment you start having bad times, you have to, try to bear them and hope for the better times to come. We've had a good run for 8.5 years. We are having a bad time now. But don't think this is the very same government, the same Prime Minister, the same set of people who have given you good times as well. It can't be an unmitigated disaster, because for a variety of reasons we are having not so good times now. So I think that perspective has to be kept, and we can't start being,
how do you keep that perspective if the oil minister, floats a trial balloon as it were, and says let's shut petrol pumps, there may be this proposal, and talks about austerity. It scares people.
Nidhi, I started by saying two things. There is a macro and a micro perspective. Now let's come to the micro. I've only spoken to the macro perspective. Coming to the petroleum minister, two things. He made it very clear that this is just one of the many suggestions. It was not a decision. It was not a final conclusion. He as a minister threw it for discussion. I personally agree that it requires a lot of discussion to have multi-pronged attacks. And obviously the multi-pronged attack, this can't be the principal part of the multi-prong. I agree with you. Which is why now you are thinking more seriously of the other fundamental and structural issues, not shutting petrol pumps. CAD deficit is one.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
Importing oil from alternative sources.
Why should the oil minister be floating this proposal at all? For at least you're honest enough to admit that he said that there was this suggestion that was there before him. He took back even that.
In fairness, Nidhi, in a few hours after he said so, he himself said in Bangalore or somewhere, I think about 5-6 hours after he said it, that this is one of the many proposals, no decision has been taken. And ultimately no such decision was taken. So I think you can ultimately limit it to his own personal view and not flog it.
Okay, Lord Desai has a question for you. I'll come to Jay after that. Yeah. I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Can the government tell ministers not to shoot off the top of their heads, but coordinate properly? Because announcements like this cause unnecessary panic and they hurt the economy. I don't care about what there is government, it hurts the economy and people suffer. Rupee will go down further.
Jay Panda, your take on this? Is it an overreaction to what Mr. Moily said, or you understand why people have reacted so angrily to this?
Well, clearly I think they are clutching at straws. It was, I think, intended as a trial balloon to try and see whether it would float, and perhaps they were hoping that some sections in the media would say that, well, at least they're trying to do something decisive. But unfortunately, rationing only creates further panic, and really only countries at war ought to be resorting to rationing. And the signals they're sending out is that we are in a war-like crisis. And I want to say something else. The minister was quoted on your program just a few minutes ago saying that he can't answer hypothetical questions whether fuel prices will rise further. It's not about, he said he's not a fortune teller, but it's not about looking at a crystal ball. It's actually about reading the writing on the wall. And I will go out on a limb and say it. I said this in Parliament on the debate on the economy last week, that with the rupee having slid as much as it has in the last few months, it is inevitable that our fuel costs will rise because the majority of it is imported. So irrespective of how much the petrol and diesel rise might be in the next few days, in the next few weeks and the next couple of months, it is going to keep on rising. And let's face that fact. There's no point shying away from it.
Nalin Kohli, let me though just take to you what the minister said and what Abhishek Singhvi was saying, that this is one of the suggestions. It is not a decision. So therefore, is there a panic that's being created by the opposition here about the state of the economy? Are we being irresponsible here? Nalin?
Well, actually, Nidhi, I think in the 70s everything was blamed on probably the foreign hand. And now in this wasted decade under Dr. Manmohan Singh and Mrs. Gandhi's leadership, we seem to blame everything on the opposition, including statements by those who are in government. I think the first part to this is a suggestion by anyone when spoken by a minister would almost amount to a message to the world that a policy consideration is in the process. So I think you can't reject that. And the second part is about what Dr. Singhvi was saying. So I mean by an analogy that, we have had good times, well, the king of good times in some senses, I guess. If we've had good times and a few bad years, we shouldn't really worry. Then I think by the same analogy, if a healthy person is now in the ICU, we should be extremely worried that he makes it out of the ICU. So I don't know, what are we trying to defend? I think Jay Panda's opening sentence sums it up. They are clutching at straws. They would do better to just honestly admit that we are in a crisis and they have no suggestions or even ideas about how to get out of this crisis.
Abhishek Singhvi, I'll take that back to you because you were still talking about the micro picture when we all jumped in.
No, I think, obviously public memory is short. People like to live in the good times. That is why the public memory is so short as to think that for our 8.5 years of good times, our lowest growth rate average was higher than the highest average growth rate of the NDA. That's a rather inconvenient fact which the NDA tends to forget.
Right now it's the lowest growth in 10 years.
It was the same Prime Minister. Now Nidhi, you are now distorting my statement.
I'm just telling you the facts.
It's the same Prime Minister, the same ministers, the same people who did give you, I repeat, the lowest growth rate on the average was higher than the highest growth rate. It was generally in the 8s, 8.5s and 9s. Yes, we've had a bad time and are having a bad time. I'm the first to admit it. I am saying that every effort is being made. It will take time for the effect of these efforts to be shown. I am candidly admitting it. But it is not to say that we should start simply being abusive to everybody in sight and say, look, this lot should be thrown out because they are giving this. The same lot gave you the good times. That's about it. That's all that I am saying. But the narrower picture, please don't predicate this program and this entire oil prices on the statement of shutting off petrol pumps. I mean, that has been clarified almost immediately. That is not any major policy anvil. There are a number of things, and even if we are thinking of something like having, and I'm saying thinking, it is no final decision, of using the Iran route, it shows how seriously fundamentals are being reconsidered. It's not going to be easy if and when the government decides.
But do you realize the signals you're sending out?
It is going to be out of sync.
Okay, Nalin wants to come in.
Look, the signal is on the petrol pump issue, which I've already answered.
I'm just talking about the signal.
And I'm very clear about that.
Jay Panda, like I asked the minister, on one hand
I just have a quick question, quick point to bring in.
There's no question of a signal after the minister
while Dr. Singhvi would like us to, he's quoted about the last decade, then let me draw his attention to the fact that under the UPA, oil production by ONGC has in this decade, from 2004 till now, slipped from 26 million tons to 23 million tons approximately. And out of the 117 oil discoveries under the new exploration licensing policy, only 11%, that's less than 15, have been approved by the government. So I think, and you have had 4 oil ministers, they have not been able even to get exploration up in this whole decade. and you are blaming the opposition or trying to remind it with the NDA?
Quick rebuttal from Dr. Singh after come to Jay. Yes.
You know, that just shows Mr. Kohli's mastery of facts which sadly are irrelevant to the debate. India doesn't rely on the oil it explores through ONGC. Irrelevant. Let me explain why. India does not thrive or suffer on the oil account by the exploration oil or the oil which ONGC produces. It survives on imported oil. That's the sad fact. If you start even exploring oil, it will make a marginal difference because those oil explorations take time. And when we do have a price issue to give, we have the opposition shouting also, along with other stakeholders in the system, that the price we are offering is too high. So that is not the issue. The real issue is we have to manage our imports. Oil exploration or production by ONGC is a negligible part of the problem.
Is Abhishek Manu Singh is saying that exploration doesn't matter because we rely on imports? Well, if you explore more, we rely less on imports. A long-run policy has to be to encourage exploration, start early, get the oil online, and not say, oh, we rely entirely on imports. It's because we rely on imports so much that we are in this trouble. And we go on being in this trouble unless the government gets its act together.
But Jay Panda, let's talk about the signals the government sent. One second, please. Let me just get Jay Panda in here because you know, on one hand you say we're only thinking about a policy, we haven't taken a decision. But, you know, it's like Nalin said, the very fact that you're considering something, you're sending out a signal to everyone else that, you know, this could even be considered. On one hand you're telling people, like the Prime Minister did in Parliament that day, that the fundamentals of the economy are still strong. On the other hand you're saying, well, you know, we might think of shutting down petrol pumps because it's come to that.
Nidhi, I don't know if you've heard the joke doing the rounds today.
Go ahead.
The joke doing the rounds is that rather than shutting down the petrol pump from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., they would do better to shut down the government from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes.
I want to just say something about the so-called good times of the earlier years.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at editorials, if you look at media commentary, if you look at old tapes from your own show over these past 9 years, you'll find a constant concern by many stakeholders that the government was not doing enough, it was coasting along on the steps taken from earlier, from momentum from earlier, and that this momentum would run out sooner or later, and it has. And when it has run out, at various times the government blames all kinds of stakeholders. It blames, you know, when the US was doing badly, it blamed that. When the US is doing well, it blames that. Sometimes it blames the opposition, sometimes it blames the judiciary, sometimes it blames the media. The fact is that the government itself has not taken any decisive steps. And I just want to conclude by giving you an example. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, they have taken some steps on FDI, because they now explain that increased FDI will offset the slide of the rupee. But this did not require parliamentary approval, did not require any kind of opposition support. They could have done it years ago.
Yes, absolutely, and that's not and that's actually a question we've repeatedly asked the government over these last few weeks. Every time they've sought to blame it on the opposition. But let's just come to the issue of austerity. Tavleen Singh, what is wrong with austerity as a principle? If the Indian middle class or the Indian elite, whatever you want to call them, did behave a little more responsibly with how they use their fuel, why is that a bad thing?
Why don't we start with the government? Why don't every MP and minister move out of those fancy houses in Lutyens, Delhi? Let them show that they're really keen on austerity. They can all move into hostels. They can give up their MP and MLA funds, which are just, which really are no use in terms of development. So let's see them start this off. If they are prepared to go for austerity, it would send a very good message. There's something I want to say to you that the finance minister once said to me when he was finance minister in a government in the 90s. And he said that if the last 10 items in the budget of every ministry in the government of India were cut, it would cause no difference at all to the functioning of that ministry and would be a huge saving. Why are we not talking about that kind of thing instead of making people think that they're the only ones who have to be austere? Why should the people have to be austere when you have a government that's gone broke, that has made the country broke by spending too much? So, if we're going to do that, then let's start at home.
But I mean, isn't there a responsibility that we
Nidhi.
also have as citizens? I agree with you about the point on the political class, and that's something I asked Veerappa Moily as well, Tavleen. But isn't there, I mean, the middle class that cribs every single day, doesn't it also need to take some initiatives too, is my point.
Why? The middle class earns its money as honestly as it can, not by, corrupt deals at huge levels. It makes an honest living. Middle class family buys a car and then discovers that the minister wants to close down petrol pumps. Why should the middle class do anything? In any case, they live with a great deal of austerity.
Do they, Lord decide, do they live with a great deal of austerity? Yeah, I'll just come to you, Nalin. I'll come to you.
I think, quite clearly,
I mean, who do the diesel subsidies actually benefit in this country?
Petrol
the
was
SUV drivers.
recently subsidized, diesel is still subsidized, and I've always, in UK, petrol costs twice what the market price is because the government taxes petrol. This government ought to be taxing petrol severely. That will make people economize. The only way to economize is to make things expensive. And if they do that, they will save a lot of imports because petrol is too cheap in India, and I think it's you can just see for the congestion in Delhi streets. Make petrol.
You see some hypocrisy in the middle class then?
Sorry? No, only the middle class is use petrol. The poor don't drive cars. So just make petrol 50% more expensive and austerity will follow.
And austerity will follow. Yes, Nalin.
And the government will follow.
Maybe I think on the austerity point that you're raising, this country is capable of austerity, and in crisis like war, in the 65 war, people gave up, went for fasting when the Prime Minister appealed for it. It's possible, but I think here it's a different issue. A government is it's like a trust, like a bank. If a bank is holding all the money of its clients, decides to waste that money, messes up, and then you tell the clients to pay or bear the price for it, it's not correct. Here is a government that has actually wasted a decade, brought a country and an economy to its knees. And then you are saying that bear the price of it for no fault of it. Why should there be a talk of austerity when the top three scams, which is coal, 2G and CWG, amount to almost 4,32,000 crores. That's more than twice the total oil subsidy of this country, and it comes down to almost 70 lakhs per village of India. So I mean, I think the government really should accept its responsibility. It has failed, it is unable to do its task. And finally, as Mr. Yashwant Sinha said, a government that blames, a finance minister that blames his predecessor for the ills of the country, and a prime minister who blames everyone but his own government, I don't think we can expect anything from them.
But Abhishek Singhvi, when the oil minister talks about austerity and he talks about people using one car, reducing unnecessary travel, which we really don't know what that means, are we going to be in that situation like China once was, where you had an odd and even, different days for odd numbered cars to drive on the streets, different days for even numbers? What is the what are you thinking about? What are some of the proposals?
Nidhi, first of all, if it sends a signal when the minister says something, I don't understand why the other part of the signal doesn't go when he says that it is not being done or not being thought of as a serious suggestion. So the signal has been resent, he has corrected himself, and we tend to ignore that when we keep on repeating the original signal only. Number two, austerity has a place, but only as an exhortatory measure. Austerity is never the central theme of reform. Austerity is exhorting you, is encouraging you, is trying to request you, but it has to be a subsidiary, ancillary part of the policy mix. The principal one is statutory or policy initiatives of reform. And I don't think the government is anywhere confusing the two. When anybody talks of austerity, you are talking of exhortation, doing your own bit, but on a voluntary basis, without coercion. Whereas law. One minute. Let me complete, please. You have 5 people there with one point of view. Let me complete. It cannot be gainsaid that it has to be by everyone. Look, austerity is not something which has to be shunned. You have countries in normal times doing these things. Selective taxes, alternate days of the week, special parking, congestion taxes. Just now I heard a suggestion to increase petrol by a tax of 50%. Well, that could be a solution. then the next day Nidhi Razdan will be having a program saying this government should be voted out, thrown out, because it's so cruel to the middle class that it's taxing at 50%. Now that is certainly a way of reducing petrol consumption.
But I mean, are you seriously telling me that
will make everybody happy?
Will
So
MPs like you all carpool? No, seriously. I mean, when you're telling everyone else to, you know, take one
again,
car.
you'll mix up. If I say this, if I say this, Didi, you will take it as a scarecrow. It can certainly happen that all of us start doing something like that, but that is not the main part of the policy. It is not to send a signal, as you all start calling it. That should be a subsidiary, simultaneous, separate. There is no mutual exclusivity or contradiction.
What does that mean?
With a tax, with an Iran option, with better managing of your finances, with a CAD reduction, austerity measures should not be shunned because they create a signal of scaring you. Why can't you suppose this the rupee slide becomes very serious, and you try actually concrete measures by having a CAD, by having more taxation of petrol, other things. Along with that, if there was to be some austerity measure, and certainly I agree entirely, it can't be only on you, it has to be on me. It can't be only on me, it has to be on everyone. I agree entirely, I mean, there's no question about disputing that. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. I'm not saying we have to do it tomorrow. I'm not saying that we're going to have carpools for people from tomorrow. But yes, people have been exhorted in peace time
will pay for
to
your
try to save petrol.
But
just like you are exhorted in peace time to try to save water.
Okay, Lord, these are people will then pay for the mistakes of the government. But again, I come to the question: how much responsibility do we have then to help? I mean, will this help? How has it worked in the UK? There's been a mixed report card on austerity in the UK.
See, in the UK, the government came into office and said we will eliminate the deficit over 5 years, and they immediately started cutting public expenditure in a serious, pre-announced way, and we are in a sight of a good recovery. And as it will happen, if Abhishek Manu Singh says austerity is a minor policy and there is some big major policy, we want to know whether there is a serious plan to cut public expenditure. As Tavleen was saying, it is possible for the government to eliminate a lot of wasteful expenditure.
Or hike fuel prices.
Cut 5 lakh crores out of the public budget and we'd be all right.
Well, you're talking about that just after the food bill has gone through. Abhishek Singhvi, what about hiking diesel prices, for instance? Who are the diesel subsidies really benefiting in this country?
Exactly.
I think it has been the stated policy of this government that in the ultimate analysis, these subsidies have to be reduced significantly, if not eliminated. There have been moves on that. APM has gone. You have market pricing. You have increase and decrease of petrol. You have made some progress. These were sacred holy cows which are not being touched earlier. But I agree with you. We have not done the whole lot. Now you know the reality. You can't make reform measures like this at one go. The principle and the spirit is accepted. It's recognized. It's recognized. I for one believe that
Lord
even
Desai says, why not? Why can't you do it at one go?
Have to be relooked at.
Why can't you do it at one go?
You cannot do it because you can say that in television studios on academic discussions where you don't have governance, accountability and responsibilities, but you can't do it in practice at one go. Yes, it should be done progressively and incrementally.
The food security bill in ordinance. You could pass the food security bill as an ordinance. Why can't you cut the
security bill, which is the food security bill, which has taken so many years to pass and which is now being held, the poor food security bill being held responsible for all our ills.
No, diesel subsidy. Why can't you do diesel subsidy quickly?
23,800 crores and now reduced to about 15,000 crores net additional. As against that, when we give tax exemptions or breaks or some change in the excise duty, nobody shouts or protests. But when the poor get a subsidy of about 15,000 crores,
he's right. Tavleen, isn't that true? The Indian middle class doesn't cry about the customs duties on the imports of gold, silver, that are waived off.
Raise them.
Yeah, but we don't whine about that. We whine much more about the food bill.
Don't blame the middle class. If you have the courage to raise tax. Don't blame the middle class.
Last quick comments. Jai Panda, to you first. Can the government, as Abhishek Singhvi says, can there be a two-track on this? We're doing reforms on one hand, but we're also talking about austerity on the other. Are we confused?
Let us not forget that in 1991, the major reforms were done with one stroke of a pen. Industrial licensing was removed just at one go. Let us also keep something else in mind. The government has lost credibility, and even if it proposes some sensible steps, they are going to be looked at with a lot of cynicism. And the government's credibility is not helped when they keep talking inconsistently. In the very same sentence, they talk about containing the deficit and about increasing expenditure. Nobody is going to take them seriously.
Nalin Kohli, last comments tonight.
Well, I think Jay has put it eloquently about the government's position. As far as, reforms we've been hearing, I mean, the Congress party has, I think, wasted this entire decade, and they have run out of ideas. I think that the future lies in the people of India electing a new government.
All right, so you're talking about elections. Tavleen, your last thoughts this evening. Do you really believe that they're serious about these austerity measures, or do you think they're just floating trial balloons?
I think that they're just trying to change the subject. If they want to do reforms, why don't they begin by clearing 10 lakh crores worth of projects that are stuck? Why don't they pay the construction companies that are building the roads? Why don't they show any sign of actually doing something instead of just talking in the air and then giving us this kind of nonsense?
All right, well, clearly the oil minister hadn't bargained for these angry reactions when he made that statement and then backtracked. Fascinating debate there. Thank you very much to all our panelists for joining us on the show tonight. The question, though, is, as we said in the beginning as well, what is this fuel austerity drive the oil minister is talking about? That, he said, is going to be launched on the 16th of September, and he wouldn't reveal much more than that. We'll take a break. More on the other big stories today after that. Well, the other big news today, Asaram finally behind bars. The self-styled godman accused of sexually assaulting a 16-year-old girl was sent to 14 days judicial custody today by a Jodhpur court.
Asaram tried every trick in the book, but after days of evading the law, the self-styled godman accused of sexually assaulting a 16-year-old girl was finally put behind bars. As the news of his arrest trickled out of the courtroom, it was greeted with protests and celebrations.
Security has been tightened at this jail behind me in expectation of this high-profile resident who will be placed in a cell specially arranged for him in the police barracks. Asaram has been sent to judicial custody for 14 days but may have to stay a day longer as his custody ends on Sunday. But the supporters clashed with the police outside the jail, demanding his release immediately.
The Jodhpur police, which grilled him for 4 hours, declared that they had completed their investigation and put together a strong case against the spiritual leader. On Sunday, they even took 72-year-old Asaram to his ashram and recreated the scene of crime.
We have collected all those evidences which corroborates her statement. So we are making it a foolproof case.
But Asaram's defense remained consistent. His claims that he was frail, weak and medically unfit, vehemently contested by the police, will now be the basis of his bail application tomorrow.
The team of doctors are saying he is perfectly medically, mentally and physically fit.
This case where Asaram is accused of sexual assault has seen some high voltage drama. First, the Rajasthan police themselves gave Asaram 4 days to appear before them. And when he did not, they picked him up in Indore and brought him to Jodhpur. Then, after keeping him for a day, the Rajasthan police have sent him to judicial custody. The question is, has the police managed to gather critical evidence against Asaram in this case, or his contention that he is innocent and this entire case is a conspiracy against them has led them to believe that Asaram will not give them any further leads into this case. In Jodhpur, with Siddharth Ranjan Das, Harsha Kumari Singh for NDTV.
And that's it on the show tonight. We'll see you all again tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Goodbye.